It's been a really long time since I last made a video critiquing Second Son. A really long time. And I'm so sorry for keeping y'all waiting so long. By now, a lot of you might think that I live and breathe off hating games. After all, some of my most popular videos are me talking down about inFAMOUS, whether as a joke or otherwise. But really, it takes a lot out of me just to say negative stuff all the time. While I'm happy to get my feelings and opinions out about Second Son, it doesn't bring me joy that I have so much to say about it. Every problem that rubs me the wrong way is just a reminder of things that you cherish can corrode over time if handled properly, neglected, or even worn out through excessive use. Especially if your expectations are particularly high. Not to mention, discussing the gameplay of Second Son was always going to be a broad subject, and I didn't quite know how to go about this video for the longest time. We're 4 videos into this overly long rant, and there is one thing that a lot of you like to make clear. Second Son's story is bad, but the gameplay is good, and as I said before, the gameplay is fine. There's a lot of games that play much worse than this game. However, surprise surprise, I have a few gripes with it. Let's do something a little different. I'm gonna start with what I actually liked about Second Son. I know, I like something about Second Son. Someone call an ambulance. I like that we can now free aim without having to look down the sights in order to shoot. I like the neon power set. I like that you can gain karma by practicing good aim with neon. I like neon dashing when you want to get through the world as quickly as possible. I like radiant sweep for when you want to get through combat as quickly as possible. I like video invisibility for when you also want to get through combat as quickly as possible, and get karma. And that's it. Now that I've squandered what little good faith you had left for me, if any, let's get on with the video. When I asked my subs in my Discord what they thought Second Son had over inFAMOUS 2, the first thing they answered was Traversal, as in the dashing to move across the map. Isn't it odd that the thing people seem to cite as the best part about the gameplay isn't even the majority of using your powers? Not the fights, not the action, but running quickly from one place to another. Now, it's true that in some games, traversal is one of the major aspects that it must be enjoyable, or it could leave the entire experience feeling lackluster. The games that come to mind are the Grand Theft Auto series, where what you drive and how well you drive it is just as important as how well you can aim and shoot. In GTA 5, I would spend hours just driving my Banshee around the entire map because it was fun to go at such high speeds, drift around turns, narrowly avoid traffic, and go off jumps and do stunts. Another game that I think of is the Spider-Man games on PS4 that reward you for how you time your swings and let you do flips and tricks in midair just to look cool, not least of all how it allows you to maintain and boost your momentum while approaching a building, whether it be running straight up the wall or bouncing off obstacles. In those games, I enjoy getting to the destination just as much as the action when I get there. What does it say about your third-person shooter action superhero game when your players say the simplistic mechanic of holding or pressing circle to run through the city is better than the combat? The other systems I mentioned are dynamic. Even with all the upgrades, Delsin gets very little to improve his traversal abilities. He may dash longer or get a jump out of it, but at the end of the day, it's going from point A to point B with little excitement or stimulation along the way. However, they did improve this slightly in First Light, where they give Fetch a speed boost when she passes through a neon cloud, and even made a few side quests that serve as races through the city. The dashing system also completely negates the climbing mechanic as a whole, except where you need to balance on specific purchase to collect a blast shard. The climbing mechanic was a staple of the first 2 games, and while it was clunky in the original, the second optimized it to where the parkour and platforming was smooth and brought character to Cole in the games themselves. In Second Son, Delsin is just a guy that climbs trees, and Fetch has no background in climbing that we know of, which is obvious that her climbing speed is the slowest of the 3 protagonists. However, despite Cole's hobby of urban exploration, Delsin is actually the faster climber of the 2. Though I also find this ironic that they made Delsin's physical climbing speed faster, despite the fact that you will rarely ever actually do any platforming outside of 2 missions, and the rest of the game you'll simply be neon dashing up every wall. It feels like the platforming is tacked on just because it's an inFAMOUS game, and taking it away would be diminishing the identity of the franchise. Before we get to the part everyone wants to hear about, we need to talk about the side quests in Second Son. It's no secret now that Second Son's development suffered from an expedited timeline, having to cover the release slot left behind by the Order 1886 in the early days of the PS4. Many aspects of the game had to be dropped or truncated just so Second Son could be released in time, one of those being side content. The more games I play, the more I've come to appreciate a good side quest. Though tertiary to the main plot, side quests can play an important role in enhancing the narrative experience in a game and immersing the player even deeper into the world. Sadly, most games treat side quests as tiny, insignificant fetch quests and boring, repetitive tasks. That's the approach Second Son takes. A multitude of the same handful of missions that repeat themselves over and over, and are simply eyesores on the map the player does just so they don't have to look at them anymore. Most of them are simple search and destroy missions ridding Seattle with the DUP spy cameras and secret agents posing as civilians. Then there are the ones where you track down dead drops to get more backstory behind the DUP and search their equipment. The side quests could have given us the opportunity to learn more about the world 7 years after the events of the second game. It could have given us a chance to learn more about Seattle and its citizens and how their lives are affected by the DUP occupation. Rather than directly walking up to people and getting your quests like the first 2 games, you just roam about the city and simply start the side quest and finish it in a very short period of time with very simple tasks to do. They are simply trash littering the map that need cleaning up. Like the rest of the game, the best phrase I can use to describe it is surface level content. Like the parkour aspects of the game, it exists out of obligation but ultimately has very little substance. With how unimpactful they are, I'd almost be fine with them removing the side quests altogether. The only side quests worth doing are perhaps Cole's Legacy, which was a pre-order bonus, or Paper Trail, which was more of a browser side quest than actual in-game content. The reason why I think these are worth keeping is because these actually go into the lore of the game and the world, and while they may not provide much in the way of exciting and unique gameplay or mechanics, they add more to the game than 90% of the other side quests do. Finally, I'd like to cover one of the major aspects Second Son did compared to the previous entries. The ability to have multiple powers. It's the selling point of the game, right? Enjoy your power. It's the ultimate goal of the game to have as many powers as you can. When I think of this aspect of the game, I feel as though we've gone a step backwards in terms of versatility and adaptability. After all, in inFAMOUS 2 we were able to have multiple types of powers at once. So how could I feel that Second Son is inferior in this aspect? For me personally, when it comes to customizing my loadouts in games, I'll always appreciate the instances where there is more variety and customization, more personalization when it comes to deciding how you play. In inFAMOUS 2, Cole can have either ice or napalm powers in addition to his lightning powers. After clearing both sides of the story, you have access to all his powers. Sounds like Second Son, right? Multiple types of powers, only that Delsin has 4 sets, and Cole has 3. Where I find Second Son lacking is that the power system is more akin to a preset loadout, rather than being able to choose every aspect of your set. In Second Son, you have 4 ways to play. In inFAMOUS 2, you have over 50 individual powers that can be bound to a button so that you can mix and match to your heart's content. You can combine ice rockets with a nightmare blast and classic alpha bolts. This allows for hundreds of different loadouts, tailored exactly to your playstyle. On top of this, Second Son not only feels restricting the variety of playstyle, but also in how quickly you're able to choose your powers. In inFAMOUS 2, it's as simple as opening a pop-up menu and pushing buttons to cycle through your powers, though the creators argue that this method ruined the flow of combat and the immersive experience to the game. To correct this, in Second Son you must run to where a power source is, which may not be anywhere nearby, and drain it to switch powers. Whereas electricity was abundant in the first 2 games, smoke must be hunted down on rooftops or from destroyed cars. Video is usually on top of high buildings or seldomly obtained by bus stop TV monitors. Neon is inarguably the most common resource, with signs scattered all over every city block, and even on undercarriages of the cars, while concrete would be the most uncommon, since you can only absorb it from defeated DUP soldiers. Running out of energy or wanting to switch your powers, in my opinion, ruins the flow of combat more in the sequel than it does in inFAMOUS 2, pulling up a menu for a few seconds. In addition, draining a source during combat is like a battle all its own. Where Cole could absorb electricity and power through attacks that didn't result in a knockback effect, Delsin is at a huge disadvantage while absorbing energy for several reasons. You can't shorten the animation for your draining, so once you hit the drain button, you're stuck in that spot until he is interrupted or you complete the drain. This makes Delsin highly vulnerable and open to attacks. And should he be attacked at all, he does not gain any energy, and you must restart the animation again. More often than not, when in the heat of battle with several enemies, it's not viable to find the nearest energy source, and to instead run to a farther point and hope the DUP doesn't chase you to that spot. And since they are just as mobile as you, they will give you little breathing room to recharge. You can be low on health and still die just for trying to recharge, since your health is only restored after he completes the animation, and not progressively during the charge like Cole does. Because of this, I find myself not wanting to switch powers on the fly. I just stick with Neon because it's more prevalent on the map. It has a more consistent dash mechanic to allow for easy escapes, and the Radiant Sweep destroys any enemy on the screen, making it the most feasible power to use. Out of 4 powers, I only choose 1. It doesn't sound like I'm enjoying my power, does it? That's my main gripe when it comes to Second Son, and the most important, I feel. Otherwise, the free aiming is very nice, though due to my playstyle, I usually have to aim down the sights to hit enemy weak points with neon anyway. Free aiming is only helpful for when you're actively moving while fighting, which, since the DUP have the worst case of auto-aim, it hardly seems like a benefit to the gameplay. Where Cole has a dodge button to quickly evade attacks, Delsin can only use his dashes. These dashes, while fast, still leave him vulnerable since he can't shoot while dashing and he still takes damage. All of these things make combat a chore to me, where in Infamous 2, I enjoyed getting into a tussle. Second Son makes me want to avoid combat as much as possible. As Cole, I felt like a badass, like a real superhero with how agile he is, not even considering his powers. And when I do consider them, he feels like a veritable powerhouse. Delsin, on the other hand, feels like a thin-skinned greenhorn getting his feet wet and acting bigger than he is. One of my favorite things about Infamous 2 is how your powers interact with the environment and even your enemies' attacks. Remember when you could bounce back grenades, rockets, shield yourself to lead into a counterattack, and even freeze your enemies and then proceed to pick them up with kinetic pulse and chuck them at other enemies? Remember how that made you feel? Like fights were engaging, like there was a reward for earning powers, like each enemy type brought something different to each fight. Sure, you could just straight shoot everything, but those small stunts made it so much more fun to play as Cole. Especially when the game popped up a stunt notification that rewarded you with just a little more XP and recognized your ability to go for a creative approach to win a fight. As Delsin, you get none of these things. I feel like a kid in a sandbox with no shovel or pail to play with. I have the sand, I have the box, but nothing to give it proper form. Not even a little water to make it malleable. This is a video I really didn't want to make, which is why it took me so long to get around to it. The gameplay aspect of a video game is highly subjective. Where one person may love the genre through which they interact with a game, someone else may very much dislike it. I'm the kind of person that isn't really fond of real-time strategy games or puzzle games, but I do enjoy a third-person shooter game and action-adventure games. Even then, there are certain approaches to these genres that really don't do it for me. By all accounts, Second Son doesn't do a bad job in how it goes about its gameplay loop, but the small tweaks it makes to separate itself from the other games in the franchise just didn't feel right to me. And yes, that means this video is more subjective than objective, which is a huge reason why I was hesitating on simply recording it, editing it, and throwing it out there. This whole video series is meant to be my opinion on Second Son as compared to the rest of Infamous, and yet I feel the need to propose my opinion as objectively as I can. That's what discussions or debates are meant to be, right? There's one part left in this critique series, and I'm gonna try to get it out to all of you sooner rather than later. Sorry again for putting this so far in the back burner. Let me know what you thought of this video by leaving a like or dislike, and I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on Second Son's gameplay in the comments section. Until next time!